Evening, everyone. Welcome to the WPCA meeting. Tonight is Wednesday, February 17th. If there are not any objections to the agenda that's been circulated, we will proceed. Seeing none, let's proceed to tonight's agenda. First order is to approval of the January 20th, 2021 meeting minutes. I had a comment on the very complicated situation that we've kind of crafted with the Cinto project. The motion or the approval indicates if there is a dip in the line, RD Cinto is responsible to replace the pipe less the cost of the initial bypass. That was not my understanding. It's my understanding that RD Cinto is going to scope the pipe. We're going to assess the situation and proceed from that point on. Am I alone in that thinking? Yes. Okay. So I would suggest to amend the meeting minutes to just period after recamerad. And then strike, there is no dip in the line. It is proposed that a liner be installed. The cost of up to $100,000. What's that noise?
Yeah, does someone have a parrot in there? It's like...
Yeah, that's my parrot. I'll mute.
Oh, that's great.
I just need to know, is that a euphemism for something, or is there really a parrot back there?
I think there's really a parrot.
Okay.
No, there's really a parrot.
Okay. Just like, am I missing something? Okay.
So to modify that paragraph, that Cinto is responsible up to $100,000, and that includes the cost of the diligence necessary to examine and scope the line. Any other comments? Any questions on that? Joe, please.
So can you say that so we can vote on it? You do it in pieces. We had talked about we've got to do a bypass, and then when we do the bypass, the line would be scoped. At which point, a decision would be made, from what I remember, to if there's no dip or if there's no damage, he would line it. If there is damage, it would have to be replaced. The 100,000, I thought was already behind us. The 100,000 was like the first meeting we had with them.
Yeah, look, we've had probably half a dozen discussions and amendments, some of which are probably an approval, some of which are probably expiring now. My intent or my hope is that we can clean this up to a point where we understand what the understanding is going forward.
Right, and I agree with that. Yes.
I would suggest at this juncture that we've agreed that they are to contribute up to $100,000 less the cost of this scoping work that needs to be done. And we limit the approval to that at this juncture. I'm sorry, can call in user 7 mute? Yeah, and I apologize. You know, I should have gotten these meeting minutes earlier. but I mean, I'm not in a vacuum here. Those who were at the meeting, do you have a thought?
You're right. It's just reframing the language so that it's reflected accurately. And I think that's the only challenge that Joe is raising. Correct, Joe?
Right, correct. Although I'm not sure which authorization we had. I remember doing an authorization where we were accepting 100,000 from him. That was even when they were doing 58 units of condominium. Then the second time we authorized it, maybe Chris Rogers could help me on this, where it was 148 units in a building. I thought there was a different agreement that he was going to replace the pipe.
Yeah, I don't want to go back to the various agreements we had. We had a very lengthy discussion last month, and we came to an agreement. And we can continue to negotiate this, you know, but it was my understanding where we landed last month was that this pipe may need to be replaced, it may need to be lined. That's town infrastructure. And whatever we decide to do, that is on the town. Shinto's responsible for 100,000, and to expedite the process, he would undertake the bypassing and the scoping himself to expedite that.
Right, that's the way I interpreted it as well.
That's not the way I remember it either. So
Okay.
let's go back over it. I was under the impression we were going to do the bypass, and once it was scoped, one of two things was going to happen. We were either going to line it because there was no dip and everything would have been fine depending on the bypass. Number two, we were going to, if there was a dip, he was required to replace the pipe.
Yeah. Okay, that's
That was my understanding.
Okay.
I mean, I could be completely wrong on that, but that's the way I walked away from the meeting. Chris, anybody?
I remember him saying also that he would replace the pipe if it had the dip.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
that was Quinn.
That was Quinn. Thank you, Quinn.
Interpretation that was said.
And I think the discussion was that there was no precedence for this because what I thought we were voting on in part was to let him go forward so that we weren't holding it up, that we wouldn't get delayed by the town process.
Right.
And that we would retroactively find a way to cover it. But that the whole point of having all those amendments was that we wanted him to move forward in the interest of.
I agree with that. There was going to be potentially two bypasses actually, and that's why we were going to offset one of the costs of the bypass.
There likely will be two bypasses because he needs to bypass to actually
Right.
scope the pipe because you can't see anything.
Right.
That's the whole reason why he has to do the bypass and scope it because the last CCTV video was worthless.
Right. That was my understanding.
So the only part that I think maybe it even happened before I joined the board was the total amount of money that he is contributing. So if he owes the full cost of pipe replacement versus a cap of 100,000, I just don't know that part. I think that might have been before my time.
Right. And I think that's what we're discussing because I think originally it was 100,000. Then there was the change in the number of units, and it became he was going to replace the pipe if
Right.
necessary. And I thought that's where we were at the last meeting. It was just then a question of how he was going to bypass, the step to bypass, scope it. If there was a problem, replace the pipe. If there wasn't a problem, the 100,000, I don't know ever came up when we discussed it last week. Chris, do you have anything? What do you remember, Chris? From
The only thing that I can remember was that he was obligated to do the bypass on his expense, and then we would
Right.
reimburse him after we evaluated the footage.
right, and that I agree with that 100%. And then, depending on what happened, what was the next steps?
It was going to be
I might suggest we leave it at that for now.
Yeah.
Prior to this
I mean-
meeting, there's been some back and forth on the Metro Center project. And, I would love for the Metro Center to replace that pipe, but they're not going, I mean, we can't have every developer who wants to develop in town replace our infrastructure. That's my view. The Metro Center is paying $150,000 for that particular pipe.
Right, I agree with that. That's,
So,
we had agreed to. They were gonna pay 150 plus the I&I.
One
I'm just trying
suggestion
to
I
get
would
straight
make,
the
or
minutes of the last
know-
public meeting. We have an
Right.
obligation to have the minutes reflect what we discussed at the last meeting, not a change as we're discussing it here. I'm just trying to figure out where were we when we were discussing it at the last meeting?
well, why don't we do this? Why don't we hold off approval on the minutes? We have the meeting recorded. We'll go back, we'll take a look at the YouTube video and listen to the audio. And we'll bring the
Yeah,
meeting,
I would-
and we'll bring the minutes back for next month.
So should I vote to table it to a date certain of the next meeting?
Yeah, please.
All right, so I move to table the approval of the minutes from the January
20th.
20th meeting to a date certain, March. Someone tell me. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, hold on.
March 17th,
To March 17th.
All right.
March 17th.
and I'll second that motion.
Second by Joe, all in favor? Matt,
Aye.
Joe, Nancy, and
Quinn says aye.
Quinn
Yep, Quinn
says
says aye.
okay, moving on. Approval to the January 27th special meeting minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Thank you, sir. Second by Nancy, all in favor?
Aye.
That
Aye.
would be unanimous. Okay, moving right along. We have in front of us it reads to consider an act, but I don't believe that we will be acting tonight. I think this is an information review to connect 33 residential units at 2 and 6 Beacon Square. Chris, do you want to give us a preview of this?
Sure. There is a proposal for 33 units to be connected to the sewer on Beacon Square. There's 2 parcels of land up there that will be combined. I think I attached a site plan as well. Parking underneath, next to the building. This project also incorporates another project that was approved by the WPCA on Beacon View Drive. And I believe it was back in 2019. They incorporated that flow data into this calculation. So I think Vin Bauer is on if he wants to, give any more of an explanation.
So yeah, my name is Avon Bauer. I work for Crucidius Engineering. I'm here on behalf of Beacon Square Properties LLC for the residential development as described by Chris. And basically what it is, there's currently 2 duplexes, so 4 units exist on the site. We're proposing 33, so a net increase in 29 units. That's going to create an increase of flow of 5,602 gallons per day. At $22 per gallons per day, that's an I&I fee of $123,244. And we use a peaking factor of 4 in all of our calculations, which brings our total anticipated flow with the peaking factor to 35,768 gallons per day. And we analyzed 3 separate sections of pipe. One of them was done at the meeting in 2019 that Chris mentioned. And that pipe was found to have the capacity of 1,114,560 gallons per day. With the total flow from our development as well as the development at the other Beacon Square properties, we come to a total of 198,848 gallons per day, or about 17.8% capacity of the pipe. Then we monitored 2 manholes recently. one at Roseville School and the other one in Roseville Road or Street. The one at the school, the capacity was determined to have 583,200 gallons per day. And our total flow after the increase with the peaking factor was 244,712, or about 42% of the pipe capacity. And the last manhole was in Roseville Street, and the capacity in that pipe was determined to be 673,920 gallons per day. And with our proposal, that's 445,880 gallons per day, or about 66.2% of the pipe capacity. I'm here to answer any additional questions that you have in regards to the development or any of our calculations.
Chris, has the department had time to review this?
We did briefly. I went back and forth with some calculation corrections. I think we probably want to take, a little more time just to look at the calculations, make sure there's no final corrections on it, and then they can resubmit for the next month's meeting.
The development across the street, Pine Tree
Housing.
that came in, what, maybe 6 or 7 years ago?
Right. That was a housing project. Yeah.
Yeah, I seem to recall that there were some infrastructure issues. Does anyone else remember?
That was before my time.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think those were issues that were actually on the property itself, not on the public utility. Any comments, questions? Okay, seems pretty straightforward. The department will take a look at over the next few weeks, and we'll be in a position to make a decision next month.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Next is 7 new lots on Sasco Hill Road and possible non-existing houses on Sasco Hill Road. Who wants to give us a preview of this?
Is it possible, sorry, is it possible to share the screen to pull this up as we're discussing? It just might be good to have the visual in front, otherwise I have to flip off from this screen to check another, but if not, I'll just do it on my own.
Chris, can you pull up the survey?
Unfortunately, I don't think I can. Mike, do you have it? I don't know if you have the survey there. I can let you share it.
I've got a paper copy in front of me, but that's it.
Well, I could pull up the site plan.
1 second.
Yeah.
Here, I'll make you the presenter if you don't mind.
There you go.
Good?
Hey,
Okay, there it is.
Thank you.
I think we're
Yeah.
celebrating our 1-year anniversary on Zoom,
I know.
or virtual.
You can see it now.
Should all bought
Yeah,
the
we got
stock a year ago.
Okay.
Chris, you want to introduce this, or should I? Or
Yeah, well, I could just briefly.
you can go
There's not
ahead.
much for me to say, but Mike did most of the work with this. But Chris Russo with Russo and Rizzio LLC, offices at 10 Sasco Hill Road in Fairfield. Here on behalf of 1143 Sasco Hill Road LLC, and we're here for the subdivision that you see in front of you. It's a 7-lot subdivision for single-family dwellings. It's a large piece. It's 20 acres. It has a very large, it's about 30% of the lot area, conservation easement that runs along the shoreline. It's an easement that's in favor of Aspetuck Land Trust. And Mike will give you the details about the sewer, but essentially we're proposing a road that would come off of Sasco Hill Road, a private road, that would access these 7 lots. But I'll let Mike get into the details about the sewer. Mike?
Well, just to recap a little bit, the property is known as 1143 Sasco Hill Road. It's the Jack property. It's as you go south on Sasco Hill Road, just before you take a right to go down to the beach, it's the big piece of property right in front of you. Oh, excuse me 1 second. And what we did is we took a look at the golf course, the Country Club of Fairfield. They just put a sewer in to service the golf course and several houses along the way. And our proposal is to install approximately 1,450 feet of 3-inch force main along Sasco Hill Road. We reference Dymars, who's the engineer for the Country Club. We had their reports. They had a report. Their report was July 22 of 2019, which is fairly new. It includes a flow monitoring report from April 2019 from ESP, and there's they have. We're going to have. Let's see. Ours is going to be a 7-lot proposal with 9 potential lots along the way. Country Club of Fairfield had an estimate of 3,304 gallons per day. That was in Dymar's report. We bumped it up 400%. We get about 13,216 gallons per day. Along their route, there's a potential to connect 8 additional houses. So that's, again, we bumped it up 400%, and there's another 12,000 gallons per day. So their total was 25,216 gallons per day. I took a look at the manhole that they're connecting into, as they did also. The capacity of the existing sewer in Sasco Hill Road is just over 500,000 gallons per day. It's 543,672 gallons per day. We have a proposed 7-lot subdivision, and along our route, there's a potential to add in 9 houses. Again, just the potential. So I come up with a number and multiply it by, again, 400%, factor safety 400%, and come up with 24,000 gallons per day. So if I add up the 3 figures, the total proposal into the sewer is 240,448 gallons per day. And the sewer has a capacity of, again, just over 500,000, 543,672. And again, all the numbers were bumped up by 4, factor safety of 4. So we bumped up everything 400%.
Yeah, I think it's probably less of a capacity and more of a gravity issue.
Well, it's gonna be a pump system. There'll be a force main. The Country Club of Fairfield couldn't make it on gravity, and they have a 3-inch force main that they installed, and that's our intent also. So from the Jack property to in front of the Country Club, we also intend to install a 3-inch diameter force main.
Gotcha. Chris, remind me, when the Country Club installed, they installed that, they used their own contractor to install that pipe on Sasco Hill Road, correct?
So that force main is essentially a private line. The town does not maintain it. We have no way, it's a force main. We really have no way of maintaining it. So the agreement was that they would put that, the developer would put that in, in our right of way per our specs, for the road and whatnot. But they, it's essentially, it's a service connection for each house. So each house would connect into that force main and pump up to gravity at the top of the hill. So essentially this would be the same scenario.
So Chris, the other houses have down across from the Country Club have not connected to that that pipe that Country Club put in the road. Is this
No,
going
not
to
yet, but there's
interfere
a-
with, what about
No,
the
each
capacity of
property-
what they're pumping?
Mike factored that into it, so,
You're okay with
factored
the
those
calculation?
He factored those properties into that calculation.
Okay.
One thing I want to mention, and it was discussed back at the May 2019, because they put a line in the road, those properties would be assessed per se. Because there's an added cost to those properties, as a grinder pump and a tank and a backup generator, it was decided not to levy those properties with an assessment. So
Right,
we
I
should
remember
probably
that.
carry forth the same scenario for these as well. I just wanted to bring that up so that in the discussion.
If there is a maintenance problem with the line, either the existing, in the country club, or if it's extended down towards the beach, who's responsible for fixing that?
It would have to be the homeowners.
Okay.
Bill,
but-
you might want to, I don't know if you want to. Bill Norton.
Yes, that's basically a lateral line for all those houses that just comes up and hooks into the sewer at the top of the hill. It's basically a private line.
So with it,
But it's
Because
located in public property though?
What's that?
It's located though in public property, right? So what approvals would they need if there was like a dig and replace kind of issue, like if there was a force main break or something like that?
Road opening permit?
got a
Okay.
road opening permit, yeah.
Isn't it technically town property? Am I wrong about that?
it is town property.
Right.
It's town property.
So
Yeah.
it's not private property. Matt,
Oh, I meant public. Did I say private?
you said public, but I meant public. Are you saying same as town owned? Is that
Yeah.
Yes.
So the homeowners own the actual force main. but
right?
the town owns the property that the force main is located.
I just wanted to make sure we were saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's an unusual one. It sounds like effectively Attorney Russo is here asking for kind of consent to go forward with the installation of an additional private line force main to tap into a private force main, which then flows into our public infrastructure. Is that right?
That's correct. This is Mike again from the Huntington Company. That's correct.
Okay.
So Chris and or Bill, do we have a legal issue here? A private line tapping into a private line before it gets to the public sewer system?
Well, I have one more question just in terms, so if there was a force main break and there was a spill, as far as like deep reporting on that, that's, even though it's technically a private line, that's a bigger deal, I would imagine, than a sewer backup into a person's house. Right? There's at least regulatory considerations with this type of situation, right?
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and these are, relatively complicated systems.
I think that's why the town.
Maybe not to Matt. So.
No, it sounds complicated to me too. I've actually never heard of this type of situation.
What we could do to uncomplicate it, I think, and I don't think they did that on this first section. We could always introduce, rather than just a grinder pump to pump into the force main, we could put a pump tank. We could put 1,000-gallon or 1,250-gallon tank, where if something happened to the sewer, you've got storage where we could have a considerable amount of time to fix the problem and have a storage on site at each property where we could hold 1,000 to 1,250 gallons of sewage. That's not uncommon. But again, that wasn't done on this first section for the country club.
But
So, Mike, just to update you on this, each property is required to have a 1,200 gallon tank minimum. So,
Okay.
so the country club has a 1,200 gallon tank.
That I
Any
know.
property connecting,
Okay,
yep, any property connecting has to have a minimum of 1,200 gallons. So as a storage.
yeah, that's why I said 1,250 because that's standard Connecticut precast. Okay, that's not a problem. Okay.
Chris, I'm going to ask the question again. Legally, do we have any place where a private line is hooking into a private line, any place around town yet? Any place we can look towards as a example?
I got to do some research. I'd like to look at, there's one scenario that I can think of in Southport, right by Southport Harbor, where there's several houses that connect into via force main. So I'd like to, this was before my time, so I'm not really familiar with it, but I think we should do some research on it and say.
Yep.
So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the concept. I'm just wondering, about the mechanics. To Matt's point, if there's a force main break and the call's going to come into the department, or if one of these future homeowners has an issue, they're going to call the department. And what do we do? Do we tell them to call the Country Club of Fairfield? It's not clear to me what kind of the forward protocol is.
Right. It's technically in our right of way, so, I think we need to get some answers on that.
But the Country Club of Fairfield, if I recall, is required for that maintenance of that section that they installed, right?
I'm sorry, you broke up. I didn't hear you.
The Country Club of Fairfield is required to handle the maintenance. If something happens to where they installed in our right of way, they are responsible for that length of pipe.
Correct.
And this project wants to hook into that very pipe.
so I think an agreement would be needed between whoever's going to hook up and the country club to allow them to hook up into their
To their
force
line.
main. And again,
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
we have a lot of laterals through town that runs through
Right, other property.
town streets before it hooks up to our sewers. So if one of those laterals broke, the town's not obligated to tell the DEP. That's a homeowner's responsibility. If we have a blockage or a break in our town line, that's when we're obligated. If we have a sanitary sewer overflow out of a manhole, that's where we're obligated.
Yeah, my question was more just related to the fact that even though it's not our infrastructure, the break would be on town property. So, but I see your point, Bill. So if an investigation, I guess, found that it wasn't our infrastructure that caused a break or that broke, then we're not obligated to report.
But am I missing something? So if there is a breakage and it is on Country Club of Fairfield, are we kind of approving something that we don't ultimately, because we don't have jurisdiction over it, we don't really have jurisdiction to approve it? If we don't have jurisdiction over the potential problems with it?
Right, that's what we're asking.
Right,
That's
okay, so
exactly
that's what
we're
exactly, okay, I understand. So I was checking my own self understanding.
Yeah, so I think there's two aspects of this. I think there's approval needed to eventually carry the wastewater to the plant and to assess a fee for that. And then the more kind of amorphous issue is being comfortable that there's an agreement in place between the various private line owners that absolves us of us of having responsibility for the maintenance and kind of domain and control of those two
Well,
pipes.
So the thing is only just absolving us. We don't actually need to take it the next step and help facilitate the agreement, correct?
No,
It's just,
no.
right. So,
No, certainly not. Okay, so this is it's kind of a new one, interesting. I would imagine that we're going to need an agreement. Is Attorney Russo still with us?
Yes.
That we would need an agreement between yourself on behalf of these particular lot holders, potentially the additional 9, and the Country Club of Fairfield, and run that agreement by our town council to make sure that it covers us to the extent that we need to be covered.
Yeah, and I'll have to look into that agreement because I was talking with Jason Spath, and I think our understanding was that Country Club of Fairfield had responsibility for maintenance, but that the town still retained ownership of the line that they put in, so that we wouldn't need to get it from Country Club of Fairfield, but the town had essentially had title to the sewer line, and so that the town would be able to grant us this, and we wouldn't have to have a separate agreement with Country Club of Fairfield. But I haven't seen the agreement, so I'm just that's just the impression that we were under.
Yeah. Well, if that were the case, I would agree. But
Yeah.
it sounds like we just don't know. We don't recall.
Although even if we did own it, though, I mean, if we granted permission and then the country club said, well, we're not maintaining due to like new connections or any of that type of stuff that we didn't agree to. I don't know what the relationship is, but that would be my main concern is if we were, even if we own it, if we were agreeing to allow other people to use it, and then they said, well, now we're not going to maintain it anymore because there's new users.
I gotta believe there's something in there that speaks to that, so that we'll just have to explore it. I mean, obviously, we would be responsible for maintaining the portion that we're adding into this, but I gotta believe the agreement said something about, what if somebody else ends up joining into this line as well. And I think it would just end up being something like a shared maintenance of that portion of the line that we then share from that point.
are we voting on this today or?
No.
Yeah,
certainly,
right. So
yeah,
we
certainly
would
not.
need that. Yeah. Okay.
Certainly not. Okay, so it sounds like there's capacity, and that there's a willingness. We just need to understand what the legal path forward is. So we will we'll defer until we know more, and Attorney Russo will either see you next month or the following.
Okay, great. And that's the only issue, or was there anything else that?
No, I just asked the department if they've had the chance to review the flow data.
Yeah, I reviewed it. Like I said, there's a few modifications. I'll go back and forth with Mike Bertullo on. As far as the site plan, I'd like to see a detailed sheet. I haven't seen a detailed sheet yet. So that's one of my recommendations. But other than that, I think we're moving along. So.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going through my notes. I'm not sure if we need a motion to table that for a future date.
Nope.
No, we just leave it open. Okay. Moving on to our next item is the discussion on the proposed policy relative to requesting a new sewer line extension. And I want to thank Joe and Chris and Bill for the extensive amount of work that they've done on this over the last 6-8 weeks, both interfacing with the homeowners of Carriage Drive, researching what other towns have done, looking at what the town of Fairfield's historically done. I joined them for a meeting yesterday, and I would say it's a pretty steep learning curve, but I think Joe can get us up to speed, Joe and Chris and Bill, relatively quickly.
Okay. So you want me to lead it, Mark?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. So really, as Mark indicated, Carriage Drive, when Carriage Drive came to us, 5 of the 6 homeowners requested that we install a pipe in the street. It's probably been the first time since the town has done any of that since the late 90s, when the town did some work on Rock Ridge and actually forced the residents to connect to the pipe. So this one's a little different. But what we decided is we need a policy that really governs us into how we want to proceed. So we, as Mark indicated, Chris and Bill did a yeoman's job in finding what other towns have been doing. So we culled out hopefully the best of all towns. And what you saw in the package tonight, it's sort of a straw man that we want to present to the rest of the commission to see if we can get a policy in place. And I might just mention that when Rock Ridge was done in the late 90s, 1996, 1997, the first thing they had said was it had been 10 years prior to them doing anything that the last time anybody had tried to do something like this. So they set their policy at that point. So really what we wanted to do is have an overriding principle, giving the commission the opportunity to be able to say if homeowners came and presented they want to put a sewer line in the street, we would just be able to say, no, it's not appropriate. So we culled that down to about 3 or 4 rules, I'll call them, or overriding principles. So the first one was if there were fewer than X number of houses on the proposed line, the commission will not consider the request. And what we talked about was 75% of the houses that are on the proposed street need to comment, need to be able to commit to attaching to the line. That was the first, and these are all straw men. These could be modified, discussed. The next thing we said, based on everything we're seeing in the town, Nancy, this is for you, Nancy. If there are any soil contaminants required to be removed from the site, the commission may not consider the request. These are all our abilities to get out of putting a sewer in the street. The next one is if there are capacity issues within the proposed area, the commission may determine a proposed time frame to address the entire area, which may affect the time frame of when we put this particular pipe in the street. So those are really the overriding that will give the commission the ability to say, no, we don't want to do it because of these reasons. The next thing we said was we need rules for the homeowners. And the first rule proposed was 75% of the homeowners on the proposed line must agree to connect to the sewer. Taking Carriage Drive as the example, only because it's in front of us right now, there were 6 houses on Carriage Drive. Basically, they've presented 5 of them would like to connect to the line. That would meet, in this instance, the 75% guideline. That doesn't mean we don't want to change that 75%, but this is what we're proposing and what we're planning on discussing. And then we're saying each of those 75% or more homeowners must sign a letter of intent indicating their desire to connect to the sewer pipe prior to any construction of that pipe. So we want them in writing because there's a cost to them. Okay, and then we got into what is the specific commitment the homeowners are going to be required to do. And we said a design. If the homeowners of a particular area come to us, they are responsible for paying for the entire design cost of the project. Okay, the homeowners will be required to select a design firm. This is to give our town staff, they will be required to select a design firm that's off a list of design firms the town has provided to them. We're not recommending a design firm, we're recommending a list. So we're not going to be accused of telling them particularly this design firm, but here's a list. You need to select from design firms that the town approved. Number two, any cost of construction will include a 20% contingency above that cost. So any bids we get after the design, it will require a 20% contingency added on it. Also, we're saying anything after that contingency is spent above the construction cost and 20%, the town will step in. The WPCA, not the town. The WPCA will step in and pay any additional cost overruns over 20%. The design will also include minimally monitoring the line and any soil testing. That has to be done in the design phase. So that would be a responsibility of the homeowners. Cost of that would be the responsibility of the homeowner.
Could you repeat that one, Joe? Sorry, internet broke up.
Included in the design as a minimum will be the fact that the flow monitoring, the TVing of any lines or anything that the town requires, and the soil testing to see that it's a viable, anything dug will not have extensive costs if we have to cart soil away and everything, is a cost of the design, not the construction. The testing of that is the cost of the design. Okay, I don't know who asked the question to be repeated. Is that okay? Did you understand it?
Yep,
Okay.
that was good. Thank you.
Now we're going to get to the construction cost. The WPCA will pay 50%, and again, this is a proposal, 50% of the cost of construction. The homeowners will be responsible for the other 50%. Any paving that needs to be done is a cost to the town, not a construction cost and not a cost to the homeowners. That's pretty consistent with other towns, Westport, Trumbull, and even what Fairfield did in the late 90s. So that's pretty consistent with what's done. Then we get to the 50% cost to the homeowners will be bonded over 20 years. I mean, they could pay it right up front or any time over those 20 years, but we're saying we will take out a bond to fund the cost of the construction for the homeowners, and they will pay it over a 20-year period. We will secure that funding. We will secure that liability with a lien, a tax lien on their properties. So if they turn around and sell their properties in between the next 20 years, they would be responsible to pay for that portion that they had committed to when they hooked up, they wanted a new system. And the only thing other than I can think that we have included is that, for example, Carriage Drive, that 6 towns, if someone on the line they wanted to connect, there would be a cost to them, a connection cost of $10,000 flat fee to connect to an existing line because they were not involved in the initial payment of putting that line in. And then, of course, any laterals and anything that's done on the property of any of the homeowners would be borne, that cost is borne by the homeowners, not the town and not the WPCA. So that's basically the straw man proposal we're talking about. Anything and everything is open for discussion now. Chris, I saw your hand, yes.
Yeah. Can I just ask one question with that comment,
Yes.
the last comment about the $10,000? So on the sheet here, it says if and when they decide to connect, plus bear the connection cost
Right.
to the lateral. Are you interpreting the cost by the contractor or the $4,250 cost?
No, I mean, my proposal included that $4,250. That was a total cost.
Right.
And you saw it was in red. That's a number that I just pulled out of the air. I mean, it has no basis in fact, other than I want that last homeowner to have some skin in the game. He decided not to connect when the other 5 homeowners in this instance were connecting. So I can't just let him have a free ride. That's the point of it. We could pick a different number. We could change it to include the 4250 standard cost plus a fee. We could do anything, but I want, the point being, I want him to have skin in the game. Just doesn't
So
get away.
essentially, if he wanted to connect, he would have to pay $14,250. Correct?
I'm saying that's not the way it's written. The way it's written, he'd have to pay 10,000 and plus the cost from his house to the lateral. You know, he'd have to pay those.
I gotcha.
If he had a pump, if he needed a pump or something on his property, that would all be his costs. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it could easily change to 1450. It can easily change to a number that's in effect at the time of his connection. That number could change annually.
So let me ask Matt and Nancy and Quinn to weigh in as we've kind of gone kind of further down this road to kind of stop and get your thoughts and feedback.
I mean, it sounds good to me. Two questions right off the bat. One is, what is the approval process to get on the engineering list, and what's the purpose of having that pre-approved list versus just saying as long as they have a designer who's a professional engineer in the state of Connecticut and follows the town's rules?
That's a good question. I'll tell you that the genesis of the thought was that we want an engineer who's skilled in, who we can be comfortable with, who knows how to put a pipe in the ground, and who might be, you know, the concern here is that there might be some water issues. So has the capacity to, and then the other aspect was that the adjoining project ended up putting their pipe down 17 feet, which jumped out at me as being, there must have been an engineering reason for that. So we didn't want someone who just did this as a kind of a side hobby.
And Matt, what specifically, why are you asking the question? Is there something else behind it?
Not here, obviously, but I mean, as a engineer who's like moved into different territories before, and run into that kind of issue of like, a client who I have a good relationship with can't use me because I'm not on a pre-approved list. I think that it just potentially stifles competition, innovation, new thoughts, all that kind of stuff. I mean, if the list can be modified on a semi-regular basis, and that's why I was asking what the approval process is to get on that list, because as long as it's somewhat open, then I have no issues with it. So.
Okay, I can go the other way. I mean, propose something else that says any design engineer that's selected by the residents or by the CAT must be approved by the town before any, before going. I mean, we could rework those words.
Yeah.
Instead of an approved list, we could go the opposite and give you what you're saying. Pick any design engineer you want that's licensed, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's putting more pressure on you.
It's like Matt, other communities have what they call on-call engineers. They have a list of They have a list of engineering firms that they can rely on, that they can go to. And as you said, the list can be, looked at all the time, or even another engineer come in and say, we'd like to be part of that list. How do we go about it?
I don't think I'd want to go the way you suggested, Joe, where they have to come to us and say, hey, we want to use this firm. But as long as we have some sort of understanding or a standardized process for updating that list on a however regular basis, every year, 2 years, 3 years, etc., then I'd have no issue with it. I mean, Bill brings up a good point that on-call contracts are very standard. So.
It just brings up an interesting point, though, in terms of policies and procedures and what, again, how you get on that list. And when you say the town approval, what does that mean? Who is the town in this instance? And what policies and procedures are in place to make sure that they're properly licensed and all the things that, and just thinking about some of our past bad experiences and not thinking the worst, but how do we protect ourselves from that?
We have a list, or
Yeah.
our engineering department has a list of engineers that are approved to work in the town, based on bonding, their past practices, past projects that they've worked on. We would have to probably do some, phone calls to other communities or other projects that they've worked on to do some reference checks and so forth.
Yeah, how long is
part
that
of the
list?
procedure that we do.
And how long?
Yeah.
I would almost even just suggest like, I don't know, every 3 years, put out an RFQ that, and then we say what we want as far as, I mean, obviously they must be licensed professional engineer in Connecticut, have whatever insurance bonding requirements and all that kind of stuff. And then that's how we can update the list, and that's my thought.
And make sure people's sons are not working, for whatever.
That's a good thought. Matt, what was the second question?
My second one was, so on the on the back end of design, how are the contractors selected? Is it public procurement process, and is it low bid, or does the homeowner select the contractor? Does the WPCA? Is it some sort of joint effort? How does that whole thing work?
Okay, we're silent on that, so I've got a blank piece of paper right now, guys. So let's have a discussion.
Okay, so this is Quinn. I also have another question. So the homeowners are going to be, they're going to pay 50% of the total estimated cost of the project, including contingency, less paving costs. Does that also include the connection to the lateral, or is that part of it, or is that in addition?
No.
They don't have to pay.
When they're required to pay on their property from the connection from their house or wherever to the lateral, that's their cost.
It doesn't say that though in here. And the second thing is, why wouldn't we charge the last homeowner who finally decides to connect 5 years later the same fee that his other neighbors paid, which would be 50% of the total estimated cost divided by the number of people who do the letter of intent? Why wouldn't we charge them the same rate? Because I think in this case, isn't the carriage drive, are we talking somewhere in like the $25,000 range now per person? Per household? It used to be like 40, 50. And if we only do half, then it's like 25-ish.
That's a good point. I mean, one thought I had also on that same line is, I mean, if we're bonding it for 20 years, then maybe they should pay the exact amount as the homeowners less time over 20 years. So if it's 10 years down the line, they pay half of what the original homeowners paid.
Yeah,
Okay, let me
or
address
something like that.
All right, let me address two things from Quinn. Quinn, the fifth paragraph up from the bottom talks about your first question, which is the cost to connect to the installed sewer line is the sole responsibility of the individual homeowner. So we got that covered. The other question you asked, when you did that calculation where you were working with the 180 that they actually presented, that had significant paving costs. Those would have to be removed, and it actually brings the cost to each homeowner, using Carriage Drive as the example, down around, I think we computed it to be about 18,000. Just so you know, from a calculation point of view, the town is taking on the cost of paving, quite consistent with what Westport did, what the town did with the Rockbridge, and what Trumbull has done with their sewer.
Right. Okay. So my point is, it should be, closer to 18,000.
I understand your basic point, the 10,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I have no problem making that cost the same cost that the other five are paying, pro rata over the period of time.
Yeah, recognizing that if it's a complex algorithm, someone's going to have to keep track of that over the next 10, 15 years. It's not any one of us.
Right, that's the reason I picked just a fixed number, and that number could change, but that's why I did it.
But would I be able to make a remark?
Sure.
Yeah, this is Joe Giederman. I'm on 95 Carriage Drive.
Mhm.
And thanks again for laying all that out. I guess just one question is, we last spoke about potentially 2 different routes for this line. Is that still an option? And not that I would want to do this, but if we were to begin the line at the end of the street and then at 63 Carriage Drive, and then the line would connect at Southport Terrace. I don't know if that changes like the scope of the project, right? That does not, that line would not then run by 29 Carriage, which would be the one participant that's not involved. That would potentially reduce costs significantly because you'd be talking about a pretty big span there. Again, if they choose to opt out, and then you'd have 5 houses, and you'd potentially have, to Joe's calculation, you could potentially have 100% participation in this project. And again, I know we're now talking about a specific project.
Right.
I just don't know how that changes. And again, looking at the math, if it brings the overall cost down 30 grand, that's 15 each, that's 15 each.
Yeah, I don't think that we. I think it's an engineering question, and I don't think that.
Yeah, and again, for the record, I'm friends with the rebels. I don't want to cut them out.
You are.
But I do know that they did put a new system in a few 5 years ago, call it, and that was a big capex. So they're not. So anyway, I just wanted to make that comment.
So Joe, we're doing 2 things here. We're trying to come up with we're using you guys as an example, unfortunately, or fortunately, but we're trying to come up with policy. I would make a statement to your comment that the WPCA has an obligation. If we're putting a line in the street, I would want to put that line in to cover all the houses on the street, unless from a design point of view, Chris and the staff says, no, that just won't work and that's just a problem.
Yeah.
Or I'd want a lateral or a connection at the end of that pipe. So the 6th house had the ability to connect to it. It might have to go a long way and he might be in the street for a bit, but he'd be paying for the whole thing. So there are other nuances, but I understand what you're saying and appreciate the comment.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding my unanswered question on the construction thing, I mean, I personally would probably defer towards the homeowners. So the group of homeowners would end up getting the say in terms of who the contractor is, and say they've got serious stake in the game. And I mean, ultimately it's their project, even though we're getting some input into it. Or is it a group decision? And if so, how I'm just curious, like where do we want to go with that?
Matt, let me ask you the question. We let the homeowners decide who their design engineer is. Do you feel that the town has to have final approval of either the firm, or certainly the town has to have final approval of the design?
The design, yeah.
Just the design, not the firm.
I read that.
Just trying to see the nuances.
Yeah, no, I mean, the WPCA or the town definitely needs to approve the drawings before they can even go out to bid or go for construction. Like that's part of the approval process.
Right.
But since it's a public-private project, I'm just not sure who actually selects the contract or the contract.
Yeah, but I think anytime you involve town monies, it has to go to a bid process. And the bids have to be evaluated, and if the low bidder is qualified, I think, and he's vetted, I think you have to go with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, particularly if we're going to cover the cost overruns above and beyond the contingency.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. I think we need to check with our purchasing as far as that answer.
Okay.
All right, I defer to you, Mr. Chair, as to how we proceed.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Joe, this is it's new. It's kind of we're trying to build something on the fly. I'm personally was moved by the notion of quite frankly not knowing the water table and the leaching issue and the sewage that's getting into the watershed in the town of Fairfield. And I think that we've come up with a creative and I think maybe generous, borderline generous proposal to help the homeowners absorb some of the cost of installing this. I think we're pretty close to a proposal that would work for the WPCA, but I think Joe probably needs to socialize it with the homeowners and provide us some feedback, and let us know what their thoughts are before we invest any much more time on this. That's my thought.
To me, we have two different issues here. We have the carriage drive, which is on the table, which we can solve and resolve. And then we have the additional going forward, should we have a policy in place that we can all agree on. So I think we have two different things going on. I mean, the policy that we propose can be applied to carriage drive. I have absolutely no issue with that. And I think it does serve to save carriage drive folks some money. And if that's what we're going to put forward anyway, or something.
Yeah, yeah.
We could do the two processes independently. I wouldn't want
Yeah,
to holding on to something we're negotiating between ourselves.
To Mark's point, though, if we've got this kind of, the carriage drive sort of the guinea pig for it. If they don't like the policy, and so they say no, then we might not have a good policy.
No, I have no problem in having carriage drive evaluated.
Yeah.
If they say no, that doesn't mean we're not going to say yes.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have no say, but I'd like to get their input also.
I played the role of the homeowner in yesterday's meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was 70
without sewers.
It was 75% expense homeowner, 25%. So
Mark got it yesterday.
yeah. So look, I think that in Joe taking it back to his neighbors and providing us with some feedback, there'll probably be some good input there that will further massage the policy that we're working towards, and I think will evolve over the next month or two.
Okay.
I appreciate the enormous amount of work that Chris and Bill and Joe have done on this. It's
Okay,
really
so
greatly appreciated.
To Joe, the homeowner, should I send him a copy of this? I don't think Joe has it, right? You haven't seen what we have in front of us.
Well,
I have not, no. If you're talking to me,
it's
Joe.
it's on public record now, so sure. No, I mean it was attached with tonight's.
Yeah, but he didn't get that information.
He doesn't get that information as a participant. I'm just asking, Mr. Chair, if Joe would give me his email address, am I authorized to send him a copy of this draft?
Of course. That's how we work.
It's the letter J and my last name, GUE.
ETERMAN.
Yeah, GUETERMAN @gmail.com.
Gmail. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're the most user-friendly commission in this town.
Oh, yeah. And it's all capital letters, Joe?
I think lowercase is probably fine.
All lowercase?
All lowercase. Thanks, Joe.
I don't think it matters, but I asked.
I don't think it
Okay.
matters.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 4, old business. I'm not sure that we have any open items under old business. Hearing none, we will move to the update on the current projects. And Chris, when we get to the East Trunk Line Interceptor. Let's, I just want to
Yeah.
provide some commentary on that point.
Sure.
It's all
No
yours.
problem. All right, so I'll start. Mill River Pump Station generator. We did get a grant extension on that till June 30th, 2021. The meter pad and meter will be set by the gas company. We're still waiting for that to be done. Other than that, that project is almost fully complete. The wastewater treatment plant generator as well, we did get a grant extension to June 30th for that project. The gas company is looking at installing the new gas line. They're going to do it in 2 phases. I did attach a schematic from the gas company. It's proposed to do it in 2 sections. The first section is from the road to the building. The second one is from the generator to the influent building. So that's going to be done supposedly in 2 sections. It's still pending with the gas company. And I talked to Laura Pooley as well as Bill did today. She reached out to the gas company again to see what the final answer is. So we should have an answer fairly soon on that. We are going for funding on that. We went last night again to the RTM. We have another meeting next Tuesday for the vote on that. Let's see. The WPCA hardening project, it's still continuing. They're kind of at a winter shutdown right now for most of it. The pump station 2 was installed last week. The contractor, the sheeting contractor demobilized. Bill, I don't know if you want to follow up with anything else on that. I think there's not really much going on. You there? We lost you. You're muted? You're muted. Let me unmute you.
Again, you're muted.
Yep, now we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Compare it.
All right, sorry. They've demobilized. They'll be remobilized on April 1st. So the sheeting contractor will be back. They are progressing in far as removing the frac tanks and the granular carbon filters. They're getting that off site. So that's hopefully will be done this week or early next week. They'll get to that. Just going back a little bit to that, the generator project, we did get a little pushback from the RTM. They wanted to one of the RTM members wanted us to see if we can get any more grant money or ask the gas company if they could just do away with their fee. So that was a little bit pushback that we got last night from
Bill,
one member.
what was their basis for the pushback? Have they gotten kicked back from the gas company? Why?
Well, Chris was on the call too. They were pushed back by just saying they're installing all these gas lines all around the town and town line. They're not doing a good job with the trenches. It was a litany of things that seemed that one person had against the gas company.
Okay.
Would you
So-
say there's any validity to what that person was saying? And do you know who the RTM member was?
Yes. What was
Drew Giorditis.
Yes, Drew Giorditis. I think there's always validity to what people say, especially when you're digging in the road and you have, inconveniences when you're going down streets and stuff like that through trenches and things like that. But, compared to other towns that, I've worked in and I've lived in, I thought the gas company did a pretty good job in Fairfield with how they did the things. And I know here in West Haven, they don't pave curb to curb. They only pave their trench. Whereas in Fairfield, I think there was a combination, Chris, right? That I think the town helped out too, where they did almost curb to curb on every street.
Yeah, we did a cost share. So the roads that got ripped open, the gas company would pay for their trench, and then we would repave the other half. So essentially, they're getting a brand new road at the end of the game. So
and again, looking at this from the gas company's point of view is when you do residential areas and things of that nature, you're going through town roads, so they don't pay for that really. And also, they have streets and streets of houses that they're hooking up with gas, so they're utilizing gas every day. Stoves, dryers, hot water heaters, furnaces. the line to the temporary generator is going to be used maybe once a week for exercise, maybe quarterly under load, and then only during, storm events or natural disasters. So it's not like they can bank on how much money they're going to make off of this for the next 20 years.
So,
Right.
so Bill, is
And
there
let me
gonna be a delay in, what, if they didn't approve it, is what you're saying? Or they?
No,
approved
no,
it,
no.
But you just have to go back with some pushback and say, we tried,
No, last night was a committee meeting, so that was one of the questions that came up.
right?
So
So is it delaying our process?
it should not. We'll answer the question and then there'll be a vote of the whole RTM.
Well, I asked because I can call Drew. I know her. I served with her, and I can talk to her and
Okay.
relay this conversation. And they should be going back to vote next week. So
Correct, and that would be helpful.
So let me just weigh in on this as well. So the gas projects that are going on in town are all to upgrade the existing gas lines that are in place. The existing gas lines are cast iron, they're old and deteriorated, putting plastic lines in. So they're not necessarily, it's more of a safety concern. I don't know if you're aware, but there was a big issue up in Massachusetts where there was a large explosion. Water got into the lines and shut off the pilot lights in people's houses. So they're trying to alleviate this problem, specifically in the beach area with the salt water and the corrosion on the pipes and so forth. So, this
And-
is
and that's
it's an
where she
upgrade
serves.
project. It's not a new project. So.
Okay.
and by the way, Drew is the RTM member for the beach area. So I don't know if that.
Right. Yeah, so that was the area that was impacted. So exactly.
Okay. Good to know. Let me ask you on the hardening project, do we need to approve the change order that's included?
No, I don't believe at this time we do. So
Joe?
that I don't know.
I haven't heard from Laura that we've have any change orders that are, or that need to be approved at this moment.
Okay. There was
I think all
one
the change
attached.
orders are coming out.
Okay.
I think everything was coming out of the contingency, but
Yeah.
you'd have to check with Laura. I'm not
Yeah,
100%
the change
on
order
that.
was attached, but she had enough to cover it. She didn't need any more money from us
Okay.
at this
I
moment.
was
Right,
just
right.
selfishly trying to avoid another special meeting. That's all.
No,
Yeah, you're right, you're okay.
good thought, Mark. Good thought.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. All right. Want me to continue on?
Please.
Okay, let's see. I think we're done with the hardening. The Eastern Turnpike Pump Station, the valve vault was set yesterday, which was another big hurdle. We got that finally in. The conduit has been relocated. We're waiting for UI. Actually, we just got an email a little while ago from them that they are going to put the work order in and start the process to get that conduit, the electric line run. The soil that was being used was going to be reused, is being removed and taken to Massachusetts for disposal. And the next process on the pump station is the Doghouse Manhole. That's about 17 feet deep, so it's another big cut that we're going to have to make. So that's going to take a little bit of time to get done as well. Hopefully the weather cooperates with us, within the next couple of days, and they can start that process. So we'll see. The force main, that's done. The pipe's installed. It's been tested. The paving will take place in the spring. Mark, you want to touch on the next one? This is the East Trunk Sewer Interceptor.
Yeah, so this is the plus or minus, I don't know, $8 million project. And we've been kicking this can down the road for a few years now. We hired Cardinal to do an engineering study. They came back. We asked Wright Pierce to take a second look at it, propose some other options, maybe value engineer it. They basically came back and said the other options, such as pump stations, really weren't viable. And we can kind of value engineer at the margin, but it's gonna be in the range of $8 million. And as you may recall, this is the line that we have reasonable assumption that it's corroded. It runs along It's over by Vinny's Ale House, runs over then over to the Metro Center. Needs to be replaced. And we need to, I think our last decision on it was with Mark Barnhart here, who was with us maybe in December, to extend the grant. We have some grant money on this, but we're going to need to move this forward. My angst has been around, who's going to oversee a project of this magnitude and keep us on schedule and on budget. And I put that to the commission in terms of thoughts on how we do that. There's a lot of things that I think can go wrong here. I asked Chris to reach out to Brian Thompson in Westport. They've recently done some directional drilling on one of their projects to kind of weigh in on to get his thoughts on that. But it's a project we need to move forward. We need to get some energy around it, and we need to get the right resources around it. So that's kind of my color commentary for tonight. Next month, hopefully Chris can give us some updates from Brian on how their directional drilling's gone. And we bring forward a proposal on what the next steps are on this project.
Hey, Mark, what was the current status of, so Cardinal did design, or they just did a sort of concept or evaluation?
They did a design.
Okay.
They presented it to the commission. I only speak for myself. I wasn't overwhelmed by the presentation. I left with a degree of trepidation relative to the capacity for them to actually to implement the design.
Okay.
So
and Wright Pierce did a redesign, or they just did value engineering on it?
they over the last couple of months, they submitted I think an A report and a B report, maybe back in the November, December timeframe, on their thoughts on what some other options may be. But those other options really weren't terribly compelling.
Okay.
Yeah, like the A report was more or less value engineering what Cardinal did. And the B report was looking at other options.
Yep.
And basically, how Mark alluded to, they really, the other options weren't very viable.
Okay.
To say
And
the least.
the 8 million estimate, is that full dig and replace, or is that for any amount of pipe bursting or directional drilling or any of that kind of stuff?
I think it was just
to replace the whole pipe.
Replace direct dig, not pipe bursting or directional drilling.
The whole thing. Okay.
I don't know how familiar you are with those technologies, Matt, but I'm not that versed in those.
Pipe bursting, I know a little bit. I mean, it's not used very often. I don't know the area where the East Trunk Interceptor is in terms of other utilities and geotech and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's loaded. It's
yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Black Turnpike.
Matt, if you went back to November, December and pulled up, were you with us? When did you join us? Maybe November?
That might have been my first.
I can send you everything.
Yeah,
Okay.
Your aptitude here would be a great service to us.
Okay.
In terms of how we go forward and who we go forward with. That's really the next two steps.
Okay.
Because it is.
If you wouldn't mind just sending me the information, if you could email it directly, I'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I'll
arguably
a Dropbox and send it to you. So
the
There's a lot of
largest
information.
I&I project we will undertake. And for those who meet with the Save Our Sound folks on a regular basis, it's a good one to profile.
Yeah, which will be tomorrow at 11.
You're more than welcome, Mark.
I'll be on a flight tomorrow morning. Otherwise, I would. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to touch on that, we still need to do environmental testing. Now, I just found out that we have 4 on-call LEPs that we could use. What I was thinking of is, why don't we get some quotes to do the environmental testing on this? I can bring the quotes back. I should have them within, by next month's meeting. And I can bring them back and present them at next month's meeting. But I think we need to, that's a big hurdle that we need to get taken care of for the environmental testing portion of this.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Yeah, we may go a different route depending on that. Chris, just one other question I had on that. I went over to that neighborhood a few days ago. It's very, parts of it are very industrial. Are there concerns that in doing that project, we're going to interrupt the business of those folks? There's a lot of heavy machinery over there.
Yeah, Mohegan Concrete is over there. That wouldn't impact them. They can go down Ardmore Street, which is the next one over. So it wouldn't impact them. Okay. There's a business at the end of the street, landscaper, but it shouldn't impact them very much. Okay. So
we'd have to make some sort of temporary accommodations for them to get in and out of their lots.
Okay. Okay. What's next?
Let's see, Riverside Drive Siphon. So we went back. We actually had an internal meeting. We went back. So originally they gave us a proposal on 4/12/2019. We made comments. We went back to Ty and Bond. Their original construction estimate for the siphon replacement was $432,000. Based on our recommendations or our comments, they modified it, and the current proposal is at $784,000. There's a lot involved that they didn't incorporate with, and a lot of it has to do with the bypass pumping. So they're going to have to shut that bridge down and bypass pump for a long period. So, Bill, what did we say for time frame? I think it was 3 months, right? Yeah, it says bypass pumping for 3 months. They only had it for 4 weeks on the last one, so that added a significant cost to the project. So
I think once they looked at their construction mechanism and how they were going to do it, and they thought maybe they could do it like sideways rather than up and down stretches. So then that wasn't feasible, and the way that the street was going to be closed and things of that nature. So that their construction mechanism, changed almost dramatically.
So I'm going to ask the question that I always ask.
Yep.
Riverside Siphon, we were a add-on. They had taking that bridge out. We were only going to replace 2 of the pipes. Then they recommended we add a 3rd pipe. We said we don't want to go into any cost. It was going to be opened up. The only reason we approved it was because it was going to be opened up and it was going to be an opportunity for us to replace the pipes there. Do we need to replace the pipes there? Originally, we didn't. Originally we said we didn't need to replace those pipes. We said because it was opened up, we're going to replace the pipes. Take advantage. $700,000 where it used to be. It started out at 300 or 400 and then it got to 420, 434, I think, at some point.
Well, that was the whole reasoning, Joe, was, we have the 2 siphons there that we're going to be able to handle the flow.
Right.
We thought we could do it without any bypass pumping, and the 3rd one was so that
extra capacity.
We could not only extra capacity, but if we had the 3rd one, we could shut an existing one down and replace it.
Right.
So then we'd never be without 2.
Right. So let's go back to that design. Keep one there, no bypass, replace one, reverse it, and replace the other while it's open. We don't need 3. We never did need 3, but we were going to take advantage. Was the original? I'm just going back to the original thoughts.
The original thought, I think, also went around the fact that we were opening it up, and if we don't do it now, then we'll never do it. So.
Yeah, it was no. I'm not saying don't do it. Let's go back to the original thought process that was being opened up by Brian Carey, being paid for by conservation. We said, while he's opening it up, use one as a bypass, change one, use the other one, change it back, change the other one. We did, somewhere along the line, it got to 3, which required us to somehow bypass the whole thing with the additional 300,000 costs. Let's go back to the original plan.
I think that's what's changed now is their construction concept of being able to do it that way. And I don't think they're capable of doing it that way where they want to just take everything out and then replace everything. They don't want to, there won't be anything there when they do their construction. They're going to remove everything there out so that they can do their channels.
But we didn't authorize that. They decided to do that. The original plan that was proposed was use one as the bypass, use one, replace one, reverse it, replace the other, walk away. The cost is because of the bypass now. That was their choice, not ours. I'm not voting. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not going to vote for any more money for that.
I'm with Joe on this. Tell that fellow Jerry Alessi over in conservation.
Yeah, I'm going to have to resign and go to some more commission.
Well, we can go back to Laura and tell her and then see what.
Tell Laura I said so.
Okay.
We weren't.
I mean, can Ty and Bond have a constructability meeting to evaluate the use of bypass or minimizing or eliminating?
I'm sure they can look at a lot of different things now.
Okay.
All right, next one. We good?
Yeah, that was very constructive. Thank you.
All right, the Outfall repair project. We received a quote. We want to do environmental testing on this. We received a quote from Ty and Bond. We also reached out to those same 4 firms to get additional quotes. Purchasing is in the process of getting them for us. And we're working with the town attorney to get a right to enter agreement. The owner lives in New York. They haven't really been cooperative. We sent numerous letters to get this, this right to enter agreement. I've even offered to drive there and get a signature from them. So we're
that's because you have a new car, Chris. That's because they gave you a new car. That's why you
Exactly. All right. So the East Trunk Wetland Crossing.
So Chris, the original outfall was 35,000, and obviously we don't have an easement to go through that guy's property. Do we have a new estimated cost?
No, there was the original. There's a grant on that, so we have $74,000 grant.
Right.
So once we get this right to enter, we can go to bid. So it's all ready to go to bid right now.
We don't know
yet. The project's
Okay.
ready. Yeah. No, we don't know what the funding. We don't know what the cost is going to be. The wetland crossing from the Metro Center to Kenwood Ave. We're in the process of going to the RTM for final funding on it. It's already been approved by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. The treatment plant. That's going to be the next question as far as when we want to enter into this agreement or how we want to enter into this agreement for design purposes. Let's see, K, Upper East Trunk relocation, there's no update on. The microgrid as well, we're requesting additional funding, so we go to the RTM next Tuesday. The pipe size and reduction in Stratfield Road, there's no update on that. Umpqua Road, they're going to come back to us in probably April. The corrosive pipe, that's been resolved, I think, by a dehumidifier on that pump station. Phase 3 and 4 was actually just posted today for bid for I&I removal. It's part of the ongoing project that we have. So we should, Bill, when is it? I think it's up in March 3rd, I think.
I did not look at the date, but it's phase 3 because we're going to do phase 3 out of this year's budget and phase 4 out of next year's budget.
Next year's, right. So, and I believe it's March 3rd. It might be wrong on the date, but we should have the bid results by then. So.
Yeah, I would say somewhere, they usually do 10 to 12 days, 10 to 12, 15 days. So should be in that time frame, somewhere around that time frame.
Okay. Covered a lot of ground tonight. Thank you, Joe, Chris, Bill, Matt, Quinn, you still with us? Nancy?
Yep, I'm still with you. Thank you.
Is there a motion to,
Did we cover the agenda item about sewer bypasses? Did we even mention it?
yes,
Oh,
we
there
have.
was one, so,
Paul Gallen.
sorry.
We had a small one on.
Just got away with that.
Don't want to forget that.
We had a small one on Reef Road, a homeowner across from Bud's Deli. I don't know if you know, there's those properties where one house is built behind the other.
Yeah.
The one behind the first one experienced their toilet came up a little bit and they weren't able to go out. There was a blockage in the street and their lateral wasn't able to overcome that. So we had to go up and clear the road. And we normally never have problems or issues there. So once the weather breaks a little bit more, we'll get out there. After we did flush it, we did clean it. We'll go ahead and TV it and make sure everything's all right.
Right. Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
And I'm going to second that motion.
Bless you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you all.
Safe, everyone. Thank
All
you.
right. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey, for everyone.
Mark and Joe, just hang on for 1 second, if you don't mind. Do we want to set up another meeting to kind of iron out the final portion of this this sewer extension policy? You know, for 2 weeks or something.
I suspect, this is a smart group of homeowners. There's probably a thing or two that they're going to come up with that we didn't think about. And let's see what their feedback is. And I think the core of it is all there. If they come back and say it's out of our price range, I still think we should have a policy.
Yeah.
Right, I think so too. I agree.
I'll meet on a couple days' notice. I love getting out of the house. Even if it's going to the sewer plant.
Right.
Actually, we pulled out a big screen that we have to work on. It's probably, it was pulled out, I think the last time, like 2005, and upgraded the chain and everything was placed for 25 grand. We just got a price now if it's 46 grand now, but these are the kinds of repairs and mechanisms that are breaking down because we're not doing the new design and the new equipment upgrades. So this is just gonna continue as all this equipment ages and we do the best we can to maintain it.
So Chris, in answer to your question, I'm going to send this draft to Joe, the homeowner. And I'm going to ask him to get back to me within a week, let's say, with any suggestions or recommendations he might want to make before we finalize this. Then I'll contact you, and then maybe we could put the meeting together prior to our next commission meeting.
Yeah, maybe we should wait for them to give us some feedback. Do you have Tim Warren's email as well?
I do not have his, but I would expect Joe to. I'll put it in my email to Joe to please, socialize it with the other homeowners.
Right, and I can send you Tim Warren's email if you want to, if you want to reach out to him.
Joe. I'm doing it right now.
Joe, and let him circulate it. That's fine.
And then, did we agree? I was uncertain. I wrote some notes and then I crossed them out. Did we agree that we want to have in the policy to start the discussion? The town will recommend design firms, or once a design firm is selected, the town has to approve it. I heard both. Which way do we want to go in the policy? At least
I think if we go with, well, the town is going to tell you who uses it, something goes wrong, then the finger pointing is going to start. Whereas if they select one and we agree with them.
Yeah, but I argue the other way. They select it, we agree. oh, you guys agreed with it and something goes wrong. Oh, you guys, the experts, you agreed with it. We're only the homeowners. It works either way.
I guess.
So I'll just leave it the way it is then and see what they come back
I
with.
think we need to get an answer from the purchasing department too, as well, I think.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, because
All right, well, you take that on, Chris.
yeah, I'll find out.
Bill,
And then when we get back together, we'll put it back together.
Bill,
Right.
let's go forward with the plan upgrade. I mean, if you have the capacity, let's do it.
well, we would love to do it.
Okay, so what's our next step? I've never done one before, so.
Well, I think well, we're pretty well set. All we have to do is decide, how we want to fund the design, whether we want to, bond it and or how we're going to fund it, because we have to fund the design.
Yeah,
Once we get a bid in place and signed and the construction starts, the construction is reimbursed, the design's reimbursed at 80%
yeah.
loan and 20% grant.
Let's bring it forward on next month's agenda to approve it, and then other people will decide if we bond it or pay cash. We don't seem to have much control over that.
Okay.
But yeah, there's it seems to be the door is open. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Bremer was all for it, so.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Okay. He was actually said he was tired of hearing about it. We're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. So
Yeah, no, we got to do it.
Right.
much rather do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Bite the bullet.
Okay.
All right.
All right. See you guys next month. Or in
Thank
a few
you.
weeks.
Or
right.
before.
Thank you, guys.
Before. Okay.
Yeah,
bye-bye.
safe travels, Mark. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Yeah, safe
Appreciate it.
travels. Yep.